If you lose your hand or even your eyes, you will be still yourself. But what happens when you lose your memory? You keep the names of the people you love and you hate in your memory. All your beliefs and ideologies exist in your memory. And even yourself, the way you identify, the way you behaved, your personality, is stored somewhere in your memory. I am Ali Amini, and I have spent the last 5 years of my life studying the psychological nature of human beings. And this is the story of information from your eyes and your ears to the deepest rooms of your memory where you keep the self safe. Everything we know, every skill or knowledge we have has entered our system through one of our sense organs. But our brain doesn't know how to deal with light or sound. That's why we have developed a system to translate the world into a type of information that our brain can read and can understand. It's called perception, and the story of memory starts when the last part of perception is done. Attention. Our attention system is basically choosing. Anything we attend to at any moment is basically chosen to enter our short-term memory. It means that from everything around us, every sound, every visible thing, everything we touch, we are choosing a handful of things to work with. Short-term memory is also called working memory. It is a fast and functional part of our memory that we use to store anything that we need at the moment. You read a phone number to dial, and in the time between reading it and dialing it, the digits are stored in our working memory. If you are like me and you don't have magical memory powers, you would probably have to return to the phone number and read it again in order to complete the process of dialing. Because we cannot put big things in our working memory and it has a very limited capacity. But even if you could put a whole phone number into your working memory and you dialed the whole phone number in your first trial, in 3 minutes, you wouldn't be able to redial it without looking at the phone number another time. Because the working memory doesn't like to keep things in it after we are done with them. It gets distracted with new stuff the moment we neglect the things that we wanted it to keep. Another interesting fact about working memory is that we usually keep only verbal information in it, although keeping visual information in it is possible when it's needed. But only a very tiny proportion of people are able to keep identical and clear images in their memory.
I have an eidetic memory, as I've told you many times.
No matter if we're talking about short-term memory or long-term memory. Take this picture, for example. If I ask you what you saw, you would probably say a bald man with mustache and glasses, because probably you have memorized a vague image with only bold details, or you have just memorized the descriptions of his appearance, like he was bald, he had a mustache, he had glasses. And if I show a bunch of people, a bunch of pictures from people who look just similar to the person that I showed you before, you wouldn't be able to find him in that crowd. For example, 15 people. You wouldn't be able to find that person in that crowd because you didn't spend enough time looking at that person to be able to push that piece of information, that image, into your long-term memory. Another thing that we need to know about working memory is its role in thinking and decision-making. Working memory works like the blackboard for your thoughts and your decisions. For any thinking process or decision-making process that we are involved at any moment, we need to have access to different pieces of information. What we want from a certain situation, what we have, the desire, the different components of a situation. These are all different pieces of information that we or our consciousness store them in our working memory. I'm not going into too much detail about thinking because my next episode is going to be about it. So if you want to see that, hit the subscribe button and I will see you there too. But what happens to the information that we store in our working memory? Does everything vanish like the phone number at the moment we turn our heads away? Well, mostly yes. From everything that enters our short-term memory, only a tiny proportion of them goes into our long-term memory. But there are 3 major ways to push information from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. Rehearsal is the way we can push things like a phone number or a new word we are trying to learn into our long-term storage. It is when you read something and you try to repeat it over and over again in your head, not to forget it. In this way, you keep the information active on the top of your mind. This activation will bulk up the bond between the new information with your memory. It usually cannot help you keep things forever in your memory unless you do revisions later. But how does the revision work? Let me explain it with an example. Imagine your partner has changed their phone number and you want to memorize it. The day that they gave you the new phone number, you read it and you try to repeat it over and over again in your head. And finally, after a few attempts, you can dial it completely without taking a peek. But the day after, when you are trying to call them, you realize that you cannot fully remember the whole phone number. And that is why you return to the number and you read it again. But this time it doesn't take as long as the first day to memorize the number. And after a few days of such practices, you finally feel confident and you can dial the number without taking a look at the phone number again. In this way, the phone number is attached to your long-term memory. But this is not the only way of memorizing stuff, and numbers and words are not the only things that we need to attach to our long-term memory. When you are trying to learn a more complex set of information like the materials of a course in college, you have two other ways to handle the data: organizing and elaborating. When you are using elaborating methods, you are basically trying to connect the new information to the things that already exist in your long-term memory, like your pre-existing knowledge or your personal experiences. And when you are using organizing methods, instead of memorizing a chain of words, you are trying to create a meaningful network of concepts that each of its components makes it easier for us to remember the others. Let me give you an example. When I was studying for my developmental psychology exam, I used my personal experiences with two of my cousins. They are over 15 years younger than me, and I clearly remember them growing up. So any new thing that I was learning in the field of developmental psychology, I tried to connect it to the experiences and to the memories that I had with those two cousins. But a part of the course material was about the history of psychology, and I had no personal memory, for example, with Freud. So I couldn't use elaboration to connect the new stuff that I was trying to memorize to the memories that I had before. So what I did for that part of the course material was that I organized every piece of information that I found important, like theories, historical figures, and different research. I organized them in a form of timeline, and in that way I could read and I could memorize everything that was important for the course material, and finally I could pass the exam. Both of these methods, organizing and elaboration, are helping us in a similar way. Well, instead of dealing with the new information as isolated, solid, cold blocks of data, we can treat them as meaningful descriptions of concepts in a reasonable connection to other concepts. And these connections, as strong as they are, can help the data be more active in our memory and be more accessible for us. Now we have understood how things reach to our long-term memory, but we yet don't know how things are oriented there. Is it like an old, messy warehouse, or is it well organized and neat? Okay, this is what I love about psychology. Our brain is a magnificent piece of nature. It has organized everything in the perfect way with a flawless functionality. First of all, our long-term memory has two different storages for two different types of data: explicit memory and implicit memory. Explicit memory is a part of our memory that is responsible for a type of data that we can consciously recall, like our personal experiences or the facts that we know or the knowledge that we have acquired. All the things that we can talk about are stored here, like the memory we have from that summer trip with our college friends, or that song that we whisper when we are walking alone, or the childhood memory of riding our brand new bicycle for the first time. You probably, like me, remember your first bicycle, its color, its size, everything about it. But the memory you have from that bicycle is not the thing that allows you or helps you when you're riding a bicycle now. Riding a bicycle is a skill, and that is stored in the other part of our long-term memory. Implicit memory is a place that we store things that are not consciously recalled. The information that exists in implicit memory is unconsciously affecting our behavior, our experience, and our flow of action. This is where we form skills, habits, taste, and even the sixth sense. Let me get back to the example of riding a bicycle for the first time. The first time you sat on a bike, you had no clue. You might remember somebody telling you, sit straight, don't look down, move forward, try to keep the balance. So many structures, and you were really trying to do them all, but yet it was still hard to keep it working. And each time you tried and you failed, or you tried and you made a new mistake, you were learning new things. Soon you understood that leaning your weight to different directions make the bike act differently. Maintaining the balance in different speeds requires different types of movements. And after so many trials and so many learning situations, your sensory system integrates with your movement system, and together they help you navigate the bike to the direction that you want. In a similar process, your habits are creating a flow of action to the direction that they think you want to go. Your taste in foods, smells, and even people is directing you into things that it knows you have enjoyed before. And your sixth sense, when you like or hate a person or a situation without being able to tell the reason, is in fact looking at your past experiences with similar people and similar situations to predict the outcomes of the present events. And the sixth sense-like feelings are the way of your scanning machine to tell you what it thinks about the people around you or the situation that you are at. And honestly, the mechanism behind all these things is conditional learning. If you'd like to know more about conditional learning, you can check this video out. I have explained a lot about it and how it can actually change our behavior. But the things that we need to know about conditional learning for this video is that it has two mechanisms. First of all, prediction, and second of all, trial and feedback. Our implicit memory is trying to do two things. First of all, it wants to predict the world, and second of all, it wants to create the outcomes that we want. You might think that the story of memory is over here. We know everything. We know the structure of it. We know which type of information goes into which storage. But that's not it. If you dig deep enough, you get into two important things. First, our schemas or our worldview, and second, our personality or our behavioral pattern. Here we go back to the prediction part. The schemas or the worldview is how we explain how the world works. If you are a man of God, you see everything as God's plan. All your racial stereotypes are helping you to predict the behavior of the people you don't know. Or even much smaller and simpler beliefs like if you fall down from a bicycle, it will hurt. These are all the things that are trying to help you to predict the world around you. And in that way, your memory is trying to help you function better in the world that you are experiencing. But the world outside is not the only thing that we are experiencing. We are experiencing ourselves too. Ever since we were a child, we are experiencing different situations, making different decisions, and even we want different things in different areas of our life. Achievement and failure have shown themselves to us many times. And ultimately, sooner or later, we always face the consequences of every action or passiveness. We learn from activities, and with that, we shape our decisions in future situations. And gradually, we form a pattern. Our way of communicating with others, our choices in life, and how we live with ourselves. These are patterns in behavior and perception, and these are the things that create our personality. The skill of living the life. And if we dig our memory a little bit deeper, we can see that at the final stage, at the bottom of our memory, we store our identity. This is where we integrate every experience we've had in life, every knowledge we have acquired, every process with which we manipulate the world around us, our understanding of the whole world, and our own personalized way of living. Identity is where we define our existence as a part of the world. This is where we feel we belong to. Every decision we make, everything we do, any way that we try to explain the world, we are actually serving the identity we have built in the years of our life. Thanks for watching this video till the end. I really appreciate the time that you are spending with me. That's why in Brainosophy, I think my mission is to make better and better content to bring the beautiful science of psychology into your life. So if you like what I am doing and you want to support me in this journey, please hit the subscribe button. And until the next time, take care.